to Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. What do you got today for us, Mike? How are you?
I'm okay. My internet just decided right now to stop working, so apologies for coming in late. But I'm willing to just kind of sit back and listen to you guys kind of talk about Washington State's 4- and 5-star recruiting problem.
So he doesn't like any of these coaches, even though they all
That's
have.
That's not true. I think Dickert's a really good football coach.
Even though they all have different styles. We're mad at Deion because he's brash. Lanning woke up on third base. Dickert's too woe is me. Rhule's too consistent with the message. It's just like what are we looking for? That's kind of where we're at with this conversation. Schaefer. Go ahead.
That kind of speaks to a larger conversation. Everybody's just mad about everything all the time, right? It's just kind of where we're at.
He bashed Dave Roberts. Only gave him credit for being a pinch runner
I didn't bash Dave Roberts. I said he was a good manager.
I mean,
they haven't won a lot of World Series for how much talent they have, but whatever. Okay.
See,
am I wrong? Am I wrong?
That's the kind of stuff we're on.
Have they won a lot of World Series considering how talented they are?
Well, they have lost to the World Series champs. So
I mean you're that much talented. You got, just maybe you win a couple more.
Wow,
that's all I'm saying.
Hey, Schaefer, how about Tua? How about Tagovailoa? Was he pretty good this week?
I'm not here to talk about production. I'm only here to talk about theoretical talent that only I can see, Damon.
It's not theoretical.
Doesn't matter if I don't throw touchdowns in 13 games to start my career.
It's not theoretical. Everybody saw it.
More than most quarterbacks in the league that have started for 10 years. But hey, generational talent is the eye of the beholder, and it doesn't matter if you can't see it or if it's not visible in the box score.
I mean, listen, if you want to go all like Dickert and have like underrated quarterbacks and just like be like, oh, hey, I couldn't get the 4 and 5 stars, but this guy's doing okay for me. That's fine. Listen, I admitted in that conversation that Tua is playing the position better than Trevor Lawrence right now. But playing the position and having natural talent are not the same thing. Listen, is Trevor ever going to be as good as Tua? I have no idea. But physically, he's more impressive. That's true.
I'm not sure how I can have a conversation about talent if production isn't part of it. Like at some point, Trevor Lawrence has to produce.
No, he doesn't. You can be incredibly talented and never produce anything. That's true.
Well, then you have to have the real conversation about what the talent is that you think is so talented.
100%.
Physically, he is physically talented. That's all I'm saying.
100%. I'm with you, Schaefer.
Well, I guess I agree in the sense that to get into the NFL, you have to be physically talented. So I 100% agree that Trevor Lawrence is physically talented.
I don't know if he's got any of the other things to become productive at a high level consistently in the NFL. And I never claimed that I did or that he did. What I am saying.
The whole thing was generational talent, which is to me the idea that you're an exceptional player in every aspect.
He has exceptional physical talent. That's what I was saying.
Isn't that true of everyone in the NFL?
No, come on, man. You can't tell me that, I don't know, pick a guy. Like, Brock Purdy doesn't have the same talent level that Trevor Lawrence does. Come on, man.
Okay, so we're talking about the 1% of the 1%, and we're going to say that there's not exceptional talent of all of it? So when you say generational talent, what you're saying is that Trevor Lawrence is of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%.
In the NFL, physically, I think he is at NFL quarterbacks. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Does he have any of the other things you need? I don't know. But physically, he is that. That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Okay. Well, then I guess we agree that he physically has the talent to play the quarterback at the NFL spot.
Schaefer, before we get to recruiting in Nebraska, let me ask you one question about quarterbacks. Did you want the Vikings to spike the ball and make it, what would that have been, second down as opposed to rushing before they threw the pick? Did you feel like that moment got away from them?
Yeah, I mean, it clearly did, just based on, I don't think the design was to run 20 seconds off your own clock when you need to score. But the part of the conversation that drives me insane is that despite all of that, he put the ball on the hands of the highest paid tight end in the league, who didn't catch it, and not only doesn't catch it, bats it up into the air for an interception. This, by the way, was the third touchdown pass that he threw in that whole, run of events.
Yep.
That never gets talked about. It's only, they didn't clock it. They win the game if TJ Hawkinson does what he's in there to do. They win the game if well, actually, I don't know that because their defense has to come back onto the field. So I should stop short of that. They take the lead if KJ Osborne catches the very first pass, which was a touchdown. They take a lead if Jordan Addison catches the tip ball in the back of the end zone. Typical catch. I just watched the Chargers score a go-ahead touchdown on a tip ball. So I know it can be done. They take the lead if TJ Hawkinson catches it there. So it's one of those things we could talk about whether he should have clocked it or not. What he did was he gave him a chance to win the game, and his teammates failed.
Yeah, I love it. Mike Schaefer not here for the Kirk Cousins slander. I am, man. Schaefer.
I haven't slandered Kirk Cousins.
Oh, I know.
Don't look at me.
We have our fair share of back and forth snark shake, but typically I think we're kind of lockstep, which is weird. And I just got my.
Well, and it's not that Cousins was perfect. I mean,
I understand.
Score inside their red zone earlier and everything else. But I'm just saying, in that moment, everyone just wants to pile on the quarterback, and especially when it's Kirk Cousins, when it's like, who helped him in that scenario? No one, other than Justin Jefferson, who he didn't throw the ball to.
So speaking of getting help from the quarterback spot, Nebraska's going to need some. No, it fits right in. Nebraska's going to need some on Saturday. Can Nebraska's staff afford to look at this shape and say, okay, either we can get these guys some help, or based on our roster, which quarterback needs the least amount of help? Which way would you be looking at this if you're Nebraska?
Probably the second, I guess. But it's hard because I don't know that there's a great delineation of the two, in just that second category. Like, obviously, other people are going to have to step up, but I don't know that there's a way that, 4 games in, that you can just say, all right, well, with this quarterback, this wide receiver is going to be able to help us more. No, I think you're sort of just stuck with what you are and what you have. And so I don't know that there's a big difference personnel-wise, or there's any shift that they can do to completely change what they are, which is a pretty flawed offense at every phase. And their best player is the quarterback, regardless of which of the two quarterbacks it is. And then on top of it, it doesn't feel like there's a big gap between those two quarterbacks at the moment. So it's, it doesn't paint a particularly rosy picture when you're talking about Michigan coming in.
We're talking with Mike J. Schaefer of Husker 24/7 Sports, who was really nice to me when I did his podcast on Sunday, being kind of mean to me now. But
it's okay. Robbie's nice to me 99% of the time when we're not on the show either. So if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. We all can take it.
Did you find it interesting, Schaefer, that Rhule basically came out and said yesterday, it's like, yeah, we're trying to be Michigan. Like, that's not usually something it seems like coaches are comfortable saying, that they're sort of emulating someone else. But it seemed like that's what Rhule was saying about Harbaugh and the way he's put it together for Michigan. I guess, am I reading too much into that that's what he was saying, or how did you take that?
I would take it as this. I think both of those guys went and coached in the NFL, obviously Harbaugh with a higher degree of success. And then he was already kind of doing this at Stanford, but he runs a team and that looks and acts like an NFL team. Like, they don't, if you were going to transpose like a college team and put it in the NFL, and I'm not saying from a talent standpoint, but like how they sort of do things, it feels like Harbaugh has an equivalent to sort of what happens in the NFL with his college football program. I could see where Rhule would want to build something relatively similar. You build around things that, are replaceable to a degree once you get it kind of established, which is you put together the offensive line and the defensive line. You work off of that. You try to get an athlete at quarterback, but somebody that can still help you in the passing game. You run kind of a pro-style offense. You work the clock. You basically play a three-phase style of football. I mean, what I'm describing is also what Matt Rhule tried to do at Baylor too. So it's not, when he's saying that, he's probably being complimentary because this is a team that's coming in. But the identity of what they're both trying to do isn't vastly different. And it's not like Rhule's really sacrificing or changing who he is to try to be sort of like what Michigan has built, because it seems to me that's a large part of what he was at Baylor too.
Schaefer, I'm kind of hearing this narrative, and I'm not buying it. So don't take my opinion. I'm curious to get yours. That we'll see if Nebraska is fill in the blank this week against Michigan, and it centers around typically, well, we'll see if they're that good against the run, or if this defense is really what we think it is. And I'm like, I'm not tucking, but I'm just saying I don't think this is the type of offense where you get that sort of litmus test. It presents its own unique challenges, but I'm not sure I'm going to learn more or less over this weekend with regards to how Nebraska can play defense. Is that fair or foul?
I think it's fair because, and my rationale would be there's only one of Michigan on their schedule. There's nobody else like this. So what you learn from this game, to me, is sort of where Nebraska is talent-wise, how long they can hang in a game like this against Michigan if Michigan's able to do what they want. Can Nebraska adjust to a team that might have a greater talent disparity than anybody that's played so far? I mean, you could make a case, and including Colorado, of overall depth. Nebraska's had as much, if not more, talent than almost all of their opponents so far. So this is the first time where that is unequivocally not true. And so for me, what we're going to learn has less to do with how Tony White's 3-3-5 holds up against Michigan's offensive line, and more to do just about where the talent overall for the program is relative to what, they want to be something. So I don't look at this like, oh, if they give up 200 yards rushing, it's a fraud, tear it down, start over, because you're not playing that team again this year. I mean, the best rushing team that you're going to face is Wisconsin, and half of the games in the games are terrible until they figure it out. And then, the other portion of the time, they never really are able to run the ball that successfully. So I don't really look at this as kind of we're going to know exactly everything about Nebraska's defense after this game, because you're not going to see another team like this. So it doesn't really matter. So, if they can be good enough for what's on their schedule, why do we care if it's not good enough against an SEC team that they're not going to play anyway? Like, I just think we get into the comparison mode when it doesn't matter. What matters is who's on your schedule.
Schaefer, could I make the argument that it's pretty similar to what Iowa just experienced with Penn State, where they were obviously not in the same class as the Nittany Lions, but you look at the rest of the schedule, it's like, yeah, they could win every game that's left on them. They could end up being 11-1, and we don't look at this as a very good football team. Nebraska, I'm not saying they're going to go win out after Michigan, but you look at it and you say, yeah, they might look really bad on Saturday. I don't know if they will or not, but then they could be fine the rest of the year. That the situation seemed a little similar to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I guess there's a part of me that's like, why is that a bad thing if that's true? I mean, we know what this program is. If they're not able to beat Michigan or handle Michigan or hang with Michigan, that doesn't mean that the season is lost or that the progress hasn't been made or that you aren't moving in the right direction. It just means that your comparative note there isn't quite, where you want it to be. But someday you're hoping to get it to where it is. And, it's a different phase with Iowa that obviously had the same offensive coordinator and the same head coach and all of it. And they share the same last name. I don't know if people know that or not. But, their situation is how do they move forward from what they have been for a while. Nebraska's is how do we establish what we are. And so that's really the only difference. But from the standpoint of like Iowa doesn't play a lot of Penn States on their schedule, absolutely true. And they, that loss aside, they still have a great chance to go to Indy to represent the Big Ten West in the final year of divisions. And they could still be looking at a double-digit win season. Like it was a rough loss, but in terms of it shouldn't shake the foundation of anything they're doing, because to me, they're still on schedule for who they are as a football program, and that's ultimately what matters.
All right, so getting back to helping out the quarterbacks, if we were doing this hypothetical on a 65 snap deal and the trend of quarterbacks running the ball 20 times a game, who's the next likely candidate to help Nebraska out offensively if there wants some sort of a semblance of balance? Or Is this just who you think we've resigned ourselves to be? You need a complimentary running back, and it's QB run game. Like, how are you extrapolating, especially based on what you just said about Michigan versus the rest of the games in the Big Ten West? Is there a difference for you in terms of Nebraska's offensive evolution?
Not this year, no, because I don't think there's going to be. Well, let me take that back. I'm going to say something complimentary at Marcus Satterfield. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that or not. And it's not an original thought, and you can take it up with the person who actually said this in the press box that I'm ad-libbing from. But at one point in the second half, Brunts leans over and basically points out every game Nebraska's made adjustments at halftime. Every game Nebraska's looked better in the second half. That tells me that they're able to see things, that they're able to learn from early in the game, which makes me feel like they should learn from the front half of the season as they work into the back half of the season. They're going to have more information about who they are, what their players can do, what they're facing, all of that kind of thing. So they, in theory, should get better as the season goes along. You look at Marcus Satterfield last year at South Carolina, they played their best football in November. So, the offense can certainly move forward. The problem I have is I don't know. I can't envision a piece that's just going to be so good on its own that it's someone that you have to account for if you're a defensive coordinator in every game. Like I think Anthony Grant can work just fine in this quarterback run game. I think he can be pretty dangerous. I think you need him because he's a home run threat in an offense that doesn't really have it. I think right now what we've seen out of the last 3 weeks out of Billy Kemp, that's probably what he is, which is a pretty solid player, but it's probably not enough to be a super damaging, wide receiver that you're really worried about if you're a defensive coordinator. It just feels like they have a collection of solid role players. Marcus Washington, when he catches football, Thomas Fedoni, all of that. It just doesn't feel like they have a star coming.
That's Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7.
Really good, Schaefer.
Schaefer, really good stuff there. Even though you were kind of mean to me, we will talk to you again next week anyway.
It's all about feelings on this show today, Schaefer.
Robbie, I'm sorry. Not really, but I'm sorry.
That's right. I'll see if we're friends later. I haven't decided yet.
Feelings.
We appreciate you, Schaefer.
Nothing more than feelings. It's almost like we didn't know that Kemp came in as about a 9-yard catch.
This is what I said before the season. I was like, if you're expecting him to be a number one, you're going to be disappointed. Coming up next, we've got the Zipline Sports 6-pack on Betting and Lula.